Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm doing another astrology predictions video, and this time we're talking about the Leo Venus retrograde that started on July 22nd and it's ending September the 3rd. And the reason that I'm going to start doing more of these astrology videos is because just knowing what the upcoming transits are can really save you from making very easily avoidable mistakes. Like, for example, a couple of months ago, I decided to take a break from astrology. I was like, I'm not going to look at the transits. I'm just going to live my life, whatever, right? So I ended up being in a situation that impacted my physical and my mental health so terribly. And when I look back on it, I was like, wow, if I had looked at the astrology transits, I literally could have saved myself from experiencing that whole terrible event. So yes, sometimes you want to take a little break. You don't want to be thinking about the future too much. But a lot of the times with astrology, it really does help, save you, or it prevents you from moving certain ways or making certain choices that will end up messing you up in the long run, right? So that's why I want to do more of these astrology transit videos, just to give y'all the heads up, just to give y'all like the do's and the don'ts, because there's enough pain and suffering in the world, right? If we can avoid it as much as possible using astrology, then I think that's a good thing. Okay, so this video is going to be it's going to be a bit long because I did write down a lot of notes. I'm going to break it down into different sections. Also, I wanted to point out that these astrology prediction videos are more general, like they're for the collective. But if you're wanting to know how this Leo Venus retrograde is going to affect you on a personal level, like how it's going to affect you in terms of your zodiac sign and your birth chart, then I did do an extended video where I break down each zodiac sign and how it's going to be affected by this Leo Venus retrograde. So it's kind of like a survival guide, for you personally to navigate through this energy and the things that you want to do in order to make the most of this energy, and the things that you want to avoid so that you don't end up in, bad situations. So yeah, the link to the extended will be in the description box down below. So let's go ahead and dive into the video. Okay, so the first section is romantic relationships. So during this Leo Venus retrograde, what you're going to be seeing is a lot of people going through breakups pretty much, because during this retrograde, a lot of people are going to be acting from a place of ego and pride, and it's going to be putting a strain on their relationships. And like I said before, I've been seeing a lot of this on social media, people like putting their relationship business on social media, it becoming like a whole big thing, and then their relationship ending. Like, for example, I think it was last month or a couple weeks ago, the whole situation with Keke Palmer and her child's father. I'm sure that y'all saw this all over social media. She went to the Usher concert. She had on, a nice little outfit, and her baby's father thought the outfit was too revealing. So he got on social media and he said something to her, like on Twitter, basically shaming her for wearing the outfit. And it was a whole big thing. And I'm sure he didn't know that it was going to blow up the way that it did. Like, he probably just thought he was going to say something and, it got some attention. But I'm sure he didn't expect for all these major news outlets to cover, what he said. So that's the thing about this Leo Venus retrograde, is that when you act from a place of ego and pride, and you say something about your relationship from that space, it can really blow up, and you could get a lot of backlash for it, or it can have a far more dramatic effect than what you think. So be very careful if you are in a relationship, even if it's not a romantic relationship, with anyone that you love. Be mindful of the way that you're reacting to them, the way that you're communicating with them. Don't act from a place of ego and pride if you want to preserve that relationship, because it might blow up and become bigger than what you expected, and then the relationship could be, completely, not repairable. So be very mindful of that. Also, you might see a lot of attention seeking when it comes to relationships during this time. I'm sure that y'all have seen the situation with that young lady, Carly Russell, I believe her name is, where she faked being kidnapped in order to get the attention of her ex, or to, I guess, get back at him, for cheating on her. That is a perfect example of Leo Venus retrograde, like people acting in these dramatic, explosive ways in order to get attention, and then it blowing up on them and backfiring completely. Because I'm sure she didn't expect for her fake kidnapping to make national news, right? She didn't expect a bunch of celebrities to be posting all about her, because a lot of people go missing, right? Unfortunately, and a lot of them don't get news coverage. So what are the odds that she would be the person to get all of this news coverage on a national level? And it turns out that she was faking it. It's because she did this during the Leo Venus retrograde. Do not do anything attention seeking or dramatic to get the attention of a lover or an ex-lover, because it is going to backfire during this time. I mean, she shouldn't have done that anyway. Of course, it's horrible to fake being kidnapped. But the fact that she did it during the retrograde is what made it blow up so crazy. So just be very mindful of that. And it's also crazy because her birthday is on July the 22nd, which is actually the day the retrograde started, which is really crazy. So if she would have had an astrologer and she would have went to that astrologer like, hey, I have this plan, is it, you know, should I do it? The astrologer would have straight up told her, no, this is going to backfire so hard on you. So yeah, that's why I love astrology. It can really prevent you from doing certain things that you're going to regret for a long time, because she's going to regret that for a long time. You know, she's not going to be able to live that down publicly or socially for a while. So y'all just be careful. No attention seeking. Even if you feel the strong urge to, do not do anything dramatic to seek the attention of an ex or a current partner. So next, I wrote down that a lot of relationships will be breaking up for the reasons that I listed: the ego, the pride, the attention seeking, but also just a lot of people are going to be realizing how toxic and codependent their relationships actually are, and a lot of people are going to be separating. So, you know, it might be time for some people's relationships to end, and this Leo retrograde, this Leo Venus retrograde could be the catalyst to cause those relationships to end, especially relationships that involve codependency. You could also be reflecting back on past relationships that you've had, like past relationship wounds could be coming to the surface, especially if those relationships involved codependency. So if you were in relationships where you felt like you had no sense of self-worth, and you were getting your sense of self-worth from that person, and they were, you know, treating you badly, those wounds could be coming back to the surface during this time. Even if you feel like you've gotten over the relationship, you feel like, oh, you know, I don't even think about that person anymore, suddenly that person could come back into your mind. And that's because there's some healing that still needs to be done. You know, sometimes we can think we're over something, and then the retrograde brings it right back around to us, because on a deep level, we still have some healing to do. We still have some things that we need to release in regard to those past wounds. So if past relationship trauma comes to the surface, you're triggered, you're thinking about a past person, just know that it is Leo Venus retrograde, and give yourself grace and give yourself as much compassion as possible, and know that these things are coming up so that they can be examined and they can be healed. And for some people, past relationship partners can actually be coming back physically. Like, it's not just a trigger that's coming back. They could be coming back, like contacting you, possibly wanting to get back together, or maybe even just wanting closure. Definitely use your discernment when it comes to that. And I'm going to do a whole tarot reading about this, about past relationships possibly coming back, because you definitely just want to use your discernment. You know, if the relationship ended for a reason, then more than likely it needs to stay ended. But there are times where, you know, the person comes back around, both of you have grown as a person, and then, you know, maybe you can rekindle something, or maybe you can end up being friends. But just use your discernment, because you don't want to step back into like a negative cycle. You know, sometimes people from our past come back around just to show us how much we've grown, not to necessarily let them back into our lives. So just be mindful of that. Also, I wrote down that a lot of people will be examining if their relationship is ego driven. Like, are you with someone because you have an ego attachment to them, or is it true love? Like, for example, if someone chose to be in a relationship with someone for superficial reasons, during this time, they could start to feel really dissatisfied with that relationship, and they could realize like, wow, I'm only in this relationship because it's like an ego attachment rather than it being like an authentic attachment. Like, for example, I know a guy, right? He has a specific type, like he likes a specific type of woman, but the type of woman that he likes is a type of woman that society says is not desirable, which is ridiculous, because society standards of beauty are just, it's ridiculous. I need to do a whole nother video about that. But anyway, he has a certain type. Society says that that type is not the desirable type, right? So he literally does not date the type of woman that he actually likes because he cares so much about society. And so he instead dates women that society says, is desirable. And he is constantly making these ego attachments with these women because he's not dating from his authentic self. He's dating from his ego because he wants society to validate him. He wants society to look at him and say, wow, you have this woman who looks a certain way. That must mean that you're a valuable person. That's what I mean by an ego driven relationship. He is making attachments based off of something superficial. You know what I'm saying? So he's an example of someone who during this time, he could really stop and think, wow, I'm not even going after the type of woman that I genuinely am attracted to, all because I want to feed my ego, all because I care about what society thinks. So that's what I mean. Like a lot of people could be stopping and thinking about, are they dating from an authentic space or are they dating from a space of the ego? So yeah. Also, you might see a lot of couples who are in the public eye breaking up. Couples who you thought were like, they had a very good, healthy relationship, maybe even couples that you looked up to, like you called them couple goals, but behind the scenes, they weren't happy and you never would have guessed that they weren't happy. Like, I know all of us know by now that social media, it's all smoke and mirrors, right? Like you should never fully believe everything you see on social media, but there are some couples that you look at them and you truly, truly think, wow, they seem solid, And during this time, you're going to see some of those couples break up because it's Leo Venus retrograde. Once again, it's like it's wiping out any relationships that are not built on pure authenticity. So if people are just in a relationship and they're staying in it because it looks good to the public, or they don't want to feel like they failed publicly because a lot of the public is like rooting for their relationship, this is going to be the time where they're like, you know what, I can't do it anymore. Even though it's going to be embarrassing to separate because now the public's going to know that we didn't have this perfect relationship, we still need to get out of it because we're not healthy. So you might see a lot of those celebrity couples that you never would have thought that they would break up, and yeah, they end up breaking up during this time. So yeah, overall, the theme for this Leo Venus retrograde in regards to romantic relationships is authenticity and codependency. Are you dating people? Are you falling in love with people from an authentic space? Or are you creating codependent bonds with people because you are getting self-worth from these relationships, and that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be asking themselves. Are they dating because of their ego, because they want validation from society, because they want validation from their family? Are they dating because they feel empty and they feel like a lack of self-worth unless they're with a certain person? So a lot of people are going to be healing these codependent sort of attachments, and they are going to be stepping more into an authentic space and dating from a more authentic space where they can actually have a long-term healthy relationship where their self-worth is not tied up in these connections, Okay, so the next theme is childhood/parenthood. So during this time, a lot of childhood wounds could be coming to the surface, especially if they are related to confidence. So you could be looking back on things that happened to you in your childhood that really just crushed your confidence and that you still carry with you into adulthood. And these are wounds that you could be finally ready to face, that you could finally realize how much of your childhood and how much it impacted your confidence is now impacting your day-to-day life, right? Like maybe you have a low sense of confidence and so you don't go after, certain career goals, or you have a low sense of confidence so you're constantly getting into relationships with people who don't treat you the best. That's going to be something that is really highlighted during this time, and this is going to be the perfect time for you to do inner child work for sure. Also, this will be a perfect time for you also to just engage with your inner child in a joyful and playful way, because when people hear inner child work, it sounds like very serious work. It sounds like therapy, which it is, but another part of inner child work is joy and playtime, like prioritizing just playing with your inner child. For example, are there things that you like to do when you were a child? Maybe you like to play basketball, maybe you like to go swimming, or just anything we like to do as a child. You could feel drawn towards doing those things during this time in order for you to connect with your inner child, or even like doing certain creative projects to connect with your inner child, watching certain shows or movies that you enjoyed when you were a child. I know for me, randomly, I just had the urge the other day to start watching old clips from wrestling, from, y'all know, the WWE wrestling. I just randomly had this urge to watch old clips of like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, all my favorite wrestlers. I was just, going down a whole rabbit hole, just, watching all these old clips, and it was making my inner child really happy. So just think back to the things that you really enjoyed doing, the things that you enjoyed watching, and, do those things. Make time to play with your inner child, because that in itself is going to be very healing. Also, during this time, a lot of parents are going to be reflecting on the way that they treated their children. So your parents could be having like some sort of epiphanies about how they may have mistreated you. You might see them come to you and apologize, or you might see them come to you and act maybe a bit more nice or kind to you during this time. Of course, that won't play out for everybody. There are parents who might, come to the realization and they won't do anything about it. But for some parents, they will actually take action, and they might be kinder to you, or they might, want to even sit down and have a discussion with you about the ways that they treated you and how they have remorse. And if you are a parent yourself, you could possibly be reflecting on, certain ways that you have treated your children, or ways that maybe you feel like you want to improve on in terms of raising your own kids. Also, a lot of people can be reflecting on their future children. Like, even if you're not a parent, you could be reflecting on maybe starting a family yourself, like whether or not you want to start a family. You could be thinking about, ways that you were treated as a child and how you want to break that cycle with your upcoming children, or with your, not upcoming, with your future children. I made it sound like it's an album coming out. Yeah, you might be thinking about how you want to break that cycle with your future children. You might be thinking about what family looks like to you in terms of having children. Like, that could be heavily on your mind during this time. So yeah, overall, definitely a good time for inner child work. And definitely a good time just reflecting on things related to your childhood. Okay, so the next section is self-worth. So during this transit, you might find yourself asking the question, how much of your self-worth is based on external validation? And what I mean by that is, how much of your self-worth comes from things like your relationships, for example. Like, do you not feel worthy? Do you not feel good about yourself unless you're in a romantic relationship? Or maybe your appearance, the way that you look. Is that something that you're wrapping too much of your self-worth in? Other things like your material possessions, your career, your academic achievements, just anything external during this transit, you're going to be questioning, like, wait, am I wrapping up too much of my sense of self-worth in those things, right? And when you ask yourself that question, it can put you in kind of a weird headspace, because if we've been wrapping up our self-worth in something external for so long, when we start to question it, it's like, okay, now what? Like, if I don't wrap my self-worth up in this, then where do I get it from, right? And that's when you start looking inward, and you start having to do like the inner work to find, that sense of self-worth from within, which is not an easy thing. Like, it's much easier said than done, especially if for your whole life you've based your self-worth on this one external thing or multiple external things. Yeah, it's not easy to just turn around and switch. Like, you know what? Actually, I'll just get my self-love from within. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, you have to, it's like a process, slow process of starting to build your self-worth and your self-love from within. Just because you potentially been wrapping your self-worth up in something external doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't mean that there aren't other great things about you. So make sure that you are celebrating yourself during this time, acknowledging how great you are, acknowledging how far you've come on your path, acknowledging all of the strengths and the talents and the good things about yourself. This thing of wrapping your self-worth up into an external thing, that's something that's common, that a lot of us do as human beings. And there's no need to beat yourself up about it. But the first step is acknowledging it, so that you can start finding love from within instead. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that section. Okay, next we have creative expression. So During this Leo Venus RX, this is a good time for you to revisit any past creative projects that you may have started. This will be a good time for you to finish them. I feel like that definitely relates to me. I have so many videos that I started in the past and I never finished. So I'm looking forward to this transit so I can go ahead and finish those. Also, I wrote down that there might be wounds and blockages related to creativity that might come up, right? So for example, if you have like some sort of creative ability or you have some sort of like creative projects, this could be the time where you're feeling extreme creative block and you're feeling a lot of self-criticism. And what you don't want to do is just not create because of that. You want to kind of push through that block in a very compassionate way. Like, don't try to push through it like, oh my God, just hurry up and get it done. Like, don't try to be harsh about it. Be gentle with yourself about it, and also kind of get to the root of where these blocks are coming from. So for me, like, my creative projects would be my YouTube videos, right? And whenever I feel blocks related to my YouTube videos and I try to force myself through those blocks, it never works. But if I sit and ask myself, okay, where is this block coming from? Like, what's really wrong? Let's get to the root of the problem. A lot of it has to do with perfectionism, me being a perfectionist. And then I have to get to the root of, well, why do you need your videos to be perfect? Like, let's get to the root of that. What's the thinking? What's the thought process behind that? And then I realized, like, that inside of my mind, sometimes I could just be way too self-critical to a point where it's just kind of unnecessary. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's completely unnecessary for me to be that self-critical and for me to push myself that hard and thinking that I have to be perfect at everything, right? So when I get down to the root of it and I switch up the way that I talk to myself and I start talking to myself in a more gentle way, it's easier for me to push through those blockages. You know, even just treating yourself like a child, right? When a child comes to you and shows you like a finger painting that they did, you don't sit there and tell the child, it's not good enough, you didn't use the right colors, it's a little bit sloppy, you should have did this better. You wouldn't do that to a child. If they bring you a finger painting, you're gonna go ahead and hang it on the refrigerator, right? Like, you're gonna go ahead and be like, oh, good job, like, I love this, you know, because the child did it and it's cute, you know? Treat yourself that way. Imagine how much more you will get done creatively if you came from that space, right? So next I wrote down, you might also be reflecting on past things that have blocked your creative expression, right? And I shared a story about this on Twitter about how when I was younger, I used to sing, and I sung in a talent show. And after the talent show, which I lost, by the way, which obviously was hurtful for me as a kid, but also after the show, people were coming up to me and they were saying to me that they thought I was lip singing on stage. Do y'all hear that? Sorry, hold on one second. I don't know if y'all heard that, but like a fleet of motorcycles literally just went by. You see what I mean? Trying to block my creative expression. But anyway, like I was saying, I lost that talent show when I was younger. And afterwards, people were coming up to me and saying to me that they knew I was lip syncing on stage, which wasn't true. And I think that's why I have a problem with people who like to come up to you and say, oh, I know this about you, or I know that about you. Like, no, you don't. First of all, you think that. You don't know anything. But anyway, all right, let me not go off into a tangent. Anyway, they came up to me saying, oh, you know, we know that you were lip singing on stage. And I was just like, no, actually I wasn't. I was not lip singing on stage. I genuinely was singing. And they were like, okay, well, sing for us right now. Sing for us right now and prove it. And I was just like, no, because am I a clown? Like, you know, am I here to amuse you? No, I'm not. So no, I will not be singing for you. I'm not like one of those monkeys in the circus that you can force to entertain. Like, no, I'm not going to sing for you. And so they were like, see, that proves our point. You were lip singing, blah, blah, blah. And it affected me very deeply as a child, to the point where I stopped singing completely. So that is an example of something that when you were a kid could have blocked your creative expression, right? And I shared that on Twitter, and a couple of other people shared their stories as well. Like, somebody shared the story about how when they first expressed that they wanted to be an artist full time, people were telling them like, art is not a real job, you have to get a real job. And after that, it kind of killed their art dreams, things of that sort. Anything that blocked you creatively as a child or when you were younger could definitely come to the surface. And this could be a good time for you to reawaken your love for, you know, that creative expression. I was saying that I feel like I should start singing again. I feel like I should start playing instruments again. My sister bought me a guitar. I'm learning to play the guitar. So yeah, it's never too late to jump back into your creative expressions, especially if it was stifled early on when you were a kid. So that's something that might come up for you during this retrograde. Okay, y'all, this is this video is turning out to be a little longer than I thought, but we're gonna power through it. So next, I wrote down feminine energy. Okay, feminine energy is related to the planet Venus, and Venus is the planet that's going to be going retrograde. So people will be reevaluating their beliefs and their attitudes about femininity. Okay, so on a personal level, you might reevaluate your own definition of what feminine energy is, like what your own definition of femininity is outside of what society tells you it is, because society has a very distinct image of what it means to be feminine, like the whole gender roles and things of that sort. I personally have a completely different outlook on feminine energy. I look at it more from a spiritual standpoint, like feminine energy to me is like the magnetic receptive energy, and all of us have that within us, including men. So my definition of feminine energy, it's very different from society's. And you might be during this time evaluating what your definition of feminine energy is, and how that relates to you. So yeah, you should definitely that's something that you should definitely ponder during this retrograde. Okay, next is finances, because Venus is not just the planet of love, it's also the planet of money. So during this time, a lot of people will be evaluating their financial situation, specifically maybe evaluating how they've been spending money, especially if they've been spending money in a very extravagant way. I'm laughing because I feel called out by this. If you're someone who is just like an overspender and you've been spending money in a very extravagant way to the point where it might be bordering on irresponsible, yeah, that might come to the surface for you to reflect on during this time. I feel very called out by this. Also, it's funny because, like I said, I see this energy playing out with people already. Like, I know someone who they spend a lot of money on sneakers. I guess you would call this person a sneakerhead. The amount of money they spend on sneakers, it's crazy, which I don't judge because I have my own spending habits, right? But I see this person already starting to evaluate if it's wise for them to be spending that much money on sneakers. So they're already starting to this energy is already hitting them. So that's what I mean when I say evaluating, the extravagant purchases that you make. Yeah, just overall, people are going to be looking at finances from a standpoint of, am I using it to make me authentically happy, or am I using my finances for external validation? Pretty much. Okay, so last I wrote down authenticity. That's going to be a very big theme that is showing up during this retrograde. And I actually tweeted about this the other day, and I said that not being connected to your authentic self is the root cause of most people's problems, because if you don't know your authentic self, how can you choose the right career, spouse, hobbies, passion, friends, etc.? You can't, right? If you're not your authentic self, then basically none of the decisions that you make will be in alignment with your authentic self. And so you'll constantly feel this sense of being off balance, or this sense of feeling empty, because you're connecting to things not from an authentic space, right? So during this time period, like during this retrograde, a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, what does my authentic self look like? And are the things in my life in alignment with my authentic self? Are my goals in alignment with my authentic self? Are the people that I have around me, are they in alignment with my authentic self? I know for me, this has definitely been showing up in terms of relationships. Like, I've been thinking back on relationships and how they just did not work out. Like, they didn't work out the way that I wanted them to. And it's mostly because I chose them not from, a space of authenticity. And that's not something that, I beat myself up for, because there's so many things in life that disconnect us from our authentic self, right? Like, for example, childhood trauma disconnects us, society, constantly telling us who we should be, constantly telling us you're not worthy or you're not valuable unless you look a certain way or you make a certain amount of money or you act a certain way. You know, that disconnects us from our authentic self. So there's so many things working against us that disconnects us. So I don't shame myself for showing up in a way that wasn't authentic and choosing people from a space that wasn't authentic, because I wasn't aware at the time. So a lot of people are going to be really pondering this, thinking about who their authentic self is and showing up as that more in their day-to-day life. And because of that, they're going to be making certain decisions that are going to make them feel much happier and much more fulfilled. And I have to do a whole video about the authentic self and finding your authentic self, making decisions from that space. It's like it's a lot that goes into it, so I'm not going to get too much into it in this video, but I'll make a whole separate video for it. But yeah, that's something that can definitely be coming to the surface for you during this time. Okay guys, so that's pretty much it. I hope that this video was helpful for you. And just remember that retrogrades are nothing to be afraid of. They are literally just a time period where we are asked to go within and to reflect back on certain aspects of our lives that still need some healing. So retrogrades work out benefiting us in the long run, because if we don't go within and if we don't assess the things that we still need to heal from, then we carry those things and they affect, you know, different aspects of our lives without us even realizing it. So it's nothing to be afraid of. Just take it day by day and just be gentle with yourself as you're working through this energy. And like I mentioned before, if you want to know how this retrograde is affecting you on a personal level, like based on your birth chart and based on your zodiac sign, then the link to the extended video will be in the description box down below. So yeah, that's it guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye.